They say boardrooms are where power plays are made, not where bloodlines bleed. But that day, under the blinding glass ceiling of Devereux Holdings, I bled dignity. I stood with the quarterly report in hand, pointing directly at the expense anomalies traced back to Caleb. Overpriced vendor contracts, duplicate payments, all traceable, all deliberate. I had the floor, until Arthur Devereux, our father, slammed his fist. "That's enough, Marlin," he said sharply. "You are suspended, effective immediately. Disruptive behavior and breach of trust. We'll speak when you're ready to act like family again." The room went silent, but Caleb leaned over to whisper to Victor, smug. "Told you she'd crack." I didn't cry, didn't beg, just stared into my father's eyes and said, "Got it." Inside, though, I whispered to myself, "They've counted me out since I learned how to count. Now they'll learn what silence earns." The elevator ride down felt longer than the 30 floors. My phone vibrated. Group chat. DHR executives only. I shouldn't have opened it. Caleb had just posted a meme, me from a blurry college photo, sitting on the steps of the University Wellness Center. The caption read, "Remember when quarterly stress meant a panic attack?" Laughing emojis trailed beneath it like flies over something dead. No one defended me, not even Kelsey, my assistant, who once said I was her mentor. I watched the screen blur, slightly. My hand trembled, not from hurt, but from restraint. I deleted the conversation, walked straight through the lobby. No coat, no backward glance. They think shame will silence me? Let's see how they like their futures narrated back at them. That evening, my doorman handed me an envelope, sealed heavy parchment, from our family attorney. I already knew what was inside. I sat on the couch without taking off my heels and read it aloud. Marlin Devereux will be excluded from all family trust allocations unless she issues a formal, public apology to Caleb Devereux for defamatory claims and family damage. The gall. I called Aunt Lucia. Her voice cracked before mine did. "This isn't business, sweetheart. This is about erasing you." "Then maybe it's time I rewrite the story," I replied. After we hung up, I went to the bottom drawer of my desk. A letter, sealed, handwritten. My mother, Evelyn, had given it to me the day I turned 25. "Use it when you're ready to be free." I hadn't opened it. Still hadn't. But I held it longer that night than I had in years. The screen on my phone blinked. I searched law firms, scrolling. Then I saw a name I hadn't said aloud in nearly a decade. Elias Brooks, lead counsel at Red Ridge Consulting, the rival firm our father always warned about. 10 years ago, he had whispered through tears, "I can't fight your father and love you at the same time." He'd walked away, and now he was working for my enemies. I tapped out a message. "Are you still in the fight?" 3 minutes passed. His reply, "Always have been." "What's the target?" A small, measured smile pulled at my lips. I typed one word back. "Truth." Then, in the quiet, I whispered to myself, "You taught me how to breathe through grief. Now, let's make them exhale the truth." The cursor blinked once, then twice. I adjusted the subject line one last time. To whom it always concerned. Elias looked at me across the table, his glasses slightly askew from hours hunched over spreadsheets, audio transcripts, and non-disclosure waivers. "Ready?" he asked. I didn't nod. I just pressed send. It was 9:01 a.m. Within minutes, the email began detonating across inboxes. Shareholders, regulatory offices, investigative journalists, and 3 high-profile anchors who owed my mother quiet favors. Included were transaction records showing Caleb's manipulations, whistleblower complaints long buried, and, my personal favorite, an unaired interview from a former CFO who'd once walked out mid-quarter, now finally ready to speak. Meanwhile, at a sun-drenched charity brunch uptown, Caleb's mimosa hit the floor. His phone screen glowed white with panic. "Arthur, Ever the general immediately convened an emergency board meeting. But this wasn't a battle anymore. It was a reckoning. It's not the loudest voice in the room, I thought as I sipped lukewarm coffee. It's the most prepared one. By afternoon, damage control was in full swing. Press releases painted our feud as a miscommunication. Caleb's smirk returned on air as he assured CNBC, "This is a family matter. We'll handle it as such." Arthur reached out the next morning. He wanted a private meeting. I declined. Instead, Elias attended, armed with a flash drive and one sentence. From Evelyn Devereux. For your ears only. They played her voice aloud. "I warned you, Arthur. If you try to silence her like you silenced me, it won't be her undoing. It'll be yours." The boardroom went silent. Someone choked on their breath. The message also referenced a time he coerced me into falsifying audit numbers when I was 23. I hadn't spoken of it since. 2 board members left the room. Later, they would call me privately. Desperation took root. Caleb went nuclear. That evening, social media erupted. A video clip from college. Grainy. Me on the floor of a stairwell, hyperventilating. 2 students trying to help. Overlay text. "Would you trust her with your money?" Talk show panels pounced. But I didn't flinch. I posted a short note. "Yes, that's me. That was real. I had a panic attack because I carried too much, alone. And the silence of those who claimed to love me was heavier than any burden." The comments flooded in. "Thank you for saying this. I've been there. You're not alone. Have you ever been called crazy just because you stood alone?" I wrote, and they answered back, loudly. Elias, meanwhile, released a timeline proving the footage had been cropped and manipulated. One of Caleb's assistants, Priscilla's cousin, had provided the original. By Friday, the tide had turned. The final blow came with a second email. This one short, surgical. I disclosed my legal control over 17% of Devereux shares held in a dormant trust left by my mother. Until that moment, even Arthur had forgotten it existed. I'd waited years to activate the proxy, and now I used it to vote in favor of a federal audit. The SEC responded within hours. Investors began pulling out. 2 board members resigned. Arthur received the notice as his calendar flashed red. Priscilla, once loyal to Caleb, vanished. Her side of the closet gone. Her ring on the counter. And me? I returned to the office, not to reclaim anything, but to release it. I walked to Arthur's door. He looked up from his desk, aged in days what pride had preserved for years. I placed my old badge in front of him. "I'm not fighting you anymore," I said. "I'm just letting you fall." He didn't stop me when I turned to leave. The sun hit the glass walls of the new headquarters in Austin like a soft declaration. No grandeur, just clarity. I stood in the lobby, watching the morning light slide down the company logo etched above the reception desk. Verterize, infrastructure for a living planet. It still felt surreal, not because I had made it, but because I had made it mine. The email from Forbes had arrived just before dawn. Marlon Devereux named Most Influential Woman in Tech, 2026. I read it twice, then pushed it aside. Recognition is fleeting. Purpose is permanent. They measured me by inherited power, I thought, glancing toward the conference room where a product demo team was setting up. I built mine from purpose. The knock came at 10:17 a.m. I turned from the glass. Arthur stood at the threshold, older than I remembered, holding 2 things, a velvet box and a yellowed envelope with my name in Evelyn's handwriting. He didn't ask to come in. He simply stepped forward and held out the box. "It's your mother's ring," he said. "She wanted you to have it when you were ready." I didn't open it. "And this," he added, holding out the envelope. She dated it December 2018. I took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. "She would be proud of you," he said, voice thin but steady. I met his eyes. "Then I'll live proud for both of us." He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. He just nodded, turned and left. Later that evening, as I sat at my desk, I opened the envelope. Inside, a handwritten will. Not the one filed with the family lawyers. This one granted me full voting control of Evelyn's shares in the Devereux Holding Company. Just over 21%. Sealed. Witnessed. Legal. She had hidden her final play until I stopped asking for permission. I called Aunt Lucia. She wrote that after your first audit presentation, Lucia said, she knew the only way you'd ever win was if you stopped waiting for them to let you. So I don't, I replied. I didn't cry. I signed 2 things that day. The activation of the will and a new $20 million contract with a federal infrastructure agency, a deal Devereux had pursued for over a decade. When the ink dried, I posted on LinkedIn. Today I signed a contract built on the future. Yesterday, I signed off the past. It went viral, but not because it was dramatic, because it was earned. Would you rather inherit your place or redefine it? Back in Charlotte, Caleb sat at the head of the Devereux boardroom table, looking like a man holding a position that had already slipped through his fingers. Arthur stood behind him, his hand resting on the family portrait hanging on the back wall. Evelyn, him, Caleb, and a 12-year-old me, cropped slightly at the edge. I always noticed that. I didn't return physically, but I called in. My video appeared on the main screen, Austin's skyline glowing behind me. I held up a small item, the same office badge I had placed on Arthur's desk months before. I'm not quitting, I said, laying the badge down. I'm graduating. There was silence. Then I reached for the velvet box. I opened it for the first time. Evelyn's ring was delicate, white gold, a single blue stone. I turned it in my hand. I'm returning this, I said. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it matters too much to be part of this circus. Arthur didn't argue. I disconnected. Later that night, Arlington Hall in Austin shimmered with soft lights and murmurs of champagne glasses. I stood under a simple arch as they announced my name, Innovator of the Year. I stepped forward, applause swelling. In the far back, near the emergency exit, a tall figure hovered watching. I knew it was him. Arthur's hands rose as if to clap, then paused midair, and lowered again. He didn't stay. Sometimes the loudest applause is the one you don't hear.